I met a psychopath on the hunt in a haunted forest. Unbelievable secrets revealed. I never should have opened that door. It felt wrong the moment my hand touched the cold metal handle. Something in the air shifted. Shadows flickered in the half-light as I stepped inside. My heart raced. This forest, long rumored to be haunted, held secrets that were not just mythical tales. I could smell damp earth and decay. The darkness embraced me like an unwanted lover, daring me, whispering my name. My routine was simple that night, a casual walk through the familiar trees with an old flashlight and my trusty backpack. But something changed when the wind picked up. The leaves rustled, whispering secrets I didn't want to hear. I shrugged it off, but dread crawled under my skin. The chill settled deep into my bones. Cracks and snaps echoed around me. It wasn't just the branches shifting. Something was watching. My breath caught in my throat. I moved deeper, clutching my flashlight like a lifeline. The beam danced across the twisted branches, revealing glimpses of shapes lurking just outside the light's reach. Each rustle sent a jolt down my spine. Fear pulsed through me. Then, I heard a soft thud like footsteps. I froze. I had stepped off the path, leaving behind the safety of the known. The forest was darker here, denser. My chest tightened. The strange noises grew louder. The shadows shifted, always just out of sight. Something was there. I could feel it, smell it. I turned to leave, but that's when I caught a glimpse. A figure. Just a shadow against the trees. Was it human? I couldn't tell. My hands trembled as I gripped the flashlight tighter, the beam flickering. The closer I tried to approach, the farther it seemed to retreat. It was playing with me, drawing me in. Panic surged. I should have turned back. I should have listened to that nagging voice in my head. The crunching leaves now sounded like thunder in my ears. I spun around, but the forest enveloped me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was not alone. The door I had opened was now a nightmare unfolding. And then it happened. A scream tore through the night. Was it mine? Or was it the figure? The darkness shuddered, and everything went quiet just before the door slammed shut behind me. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. What had once been a mere chill in the air now carried the weight of an unseen presence, an entity that tethered itself to my spine like a vice. I stood paralyzed, the rapid thudding of my heart syncing with the clockwork rhythm of the forest, each beat echoing louder than the last. Time became disjointed. It felt as if moments bled into one another. Had I been standing there for seconds, or hours? As silence engulfed me, the shadows stretched and twisted, appearing to conspire under the canopy of ancient trees. I could feel their breath, a whispering caress that sent shivers darting down my arms. My instincts screamed at me to flee, but my feet remained anchored to the earth. The tremors of fear were too powerful. A flicker from my flashlight cast a circle of light on the ground, just large enough to illuminate a scrap of gray fabric caught in the underbrush. Approaching carefully, my mind raced. It resembled a piece of clothing. Perhaps it belonged to someone who had wandered before me, or worse, someone who had been claimed by this warped sanctuary. I knelt to examine it, the texture rough against my fingers. My breath hitched as I recognized a tattered fragment of a jacket, frayed and stained dark with something unsettlingly familiar. Adrenaline coursed through me as I thought of those macabre, cavernous eyes that seemed to follow me from beyond the shadows, but then, an insistent rustling startled me. It came from deeper within the darkness. I turned my head sharply, light slicing through the obsidian veil, revealing nothing but the sterile silhouettes of trees. The rustling intensified, a low growl reverberating through the air. My stomach dropped. I was being hunted that I staggered back, darting away from the sound, adrenaline fueling my legs as I stumbled blindly through the brush. The forest swallowed me whole, the paths twisting grotesquely, as if they had conspired against my escape. I could no longer orient myself, the world had dimmed, turning the known into the inconceivable. Help. I cried out, the word clawing its way from my throat, raw and desperate. It echoed through the trees, but the response was a haunting cacophony of snickers and whispers. I felt them eyes in the dark. Doric, stone-like figures huddled behind tree trunks, their milky eyes reflecting my fear back at me, and then shifting as if debating whether I was prey or amusement. Then came the unmistakable sound of footsteps, the creaking of leaves and snapping of twigs. Not just one set, but many. An army, advancing towards me, their intentions a malevolent mystery. My hand quaked around the flashlight, the beam waning like my hope. Suddenly, a figure broke away from the shadows, tall and grotesque. A face shadowed, with deep-set eyes and a jagged grin that split his pallid face. It resembled the silhouette I had seen earlier, no longer just a fleeting shadow. Come out to play, it called, the tone smooth yet dripping with something darker. The other shadows around it stirred, obeying every whim of its voice. I felt my blood run cold. I spun around, escaping deeper into the woods, branches clawing at my skin as terror propelled me forward. But the shadows were relentless, weaving seamlessly through the trees, their song hauntingly close. With each thud of my heart, I could sense their glee. In my frenzied flight, I stumbled, barely catching myself on a gnarled tree trunk. I glanced back. The horrific figure was now mere feet away, the others swarming beside it like a pack of wolves. I could see them more clearly now, a grotesque assembly, their limbs twisted and unnatural. Just as I thought I might turn to confront the inevitable, the beam of my flashlight flickered once more, the darkness almost palpable. And then, the unthinkable happened. The trees around me began to shake, their roots twisting and writhing like serpents, encapsulating me in a prison of bark and vine. The last beam of light flashed, illuminating a moment of sheer terror as the shadow lunged, and my scream merged with the cacophony of laughter echoing through the night, and then everything went black. When I awoke, disoriented and gasping, I found myself sprawled on damp earth, encased in a fragile stillness broken only by the distant rush of water. My flashlight lay beyond my reach, shrouded in spirals of mist that snaked through the trees like phantoms. An acrid smell filled my nostrils, the scent of decay mingling with the fresh Rhinan olfactory assault that clenched my stomach into knots. I scrambled to my feet, wincing as crumbling leaves crunched beneath my weight. The air was thick, almost electric, with an unseen force that made every hair on my body stand on end. My heart thundered as I turned in slow circles, searching for any sign, any clue that could guide me home. But the forest now looked alien, its contours shifting and blurring, as though the landscape were alive, reshaping itself to trap me further within this waking nightmare. That I tentatively stepped forward, straining to hear anything, but the oppressive silence was almost deafening. That's when I noticed it. Flickers of movement danced at the edges of my vision, shadows scuttling between the trunks, slinking from one place to another like oily specters. Panic lanced through me, they knew I was awake. They were watching. My instinct flared, propelling me into a hurried walk, then a desperate sprint. The trees seemed to close in around me, their branches clawing at the air as if to pull me back into their embrace. I could hear whispers, now soft, indiscernible murmurs that lapped at my ears like waves against a desolate shore. Join us, they seemed to beckon, laced with the promise of madness. As I stumbled deeper into the woods, a primal urge to survive twisted my gut. I broke through the underbrush and nearly collapsed at the sight before me. A dilapidated cabin loomed ahead, its windows opaque with grime, the wooden exterior warped and sagging under the weight of years. It appeared forgotten, a remnant of despair ensconced in encroaching foliage. I hesitated at the threshold, torn between the safety of its walls and the demons that lurked beyond. But the forest was closing in again, and I could feel those malevolent eyes tracing my every inch. With a shaky exhale, I pushed the door ajar, its creaking protest echoing through the night as though inviting me into a tomb. The interior was murky, cloaked in shadows that seemed to coil around every corner. I absorbed the scene, cobwebs draping like shrouds, overturned furniture half embedded in dirt, and a musty smell that clung to the air, heavy with secrets of those who had once inhabited this wretched space. I felt the weight of epochs pressing down on me, invisible spirits trapped within the walls. Scaling the neglected staircase, I glanced through an upper window, hoping for an escape route. But when I leaned closer, my reflection warping beneath the grime revealed something that made my heart race. The ghastly figure once again, poised just outside. The jagged grin stretched across its face, unnaturally wide, its eyes sparkling with a thrill that sent chills tingling through my limbs. "Peekaboo," it rasped, its voice sinuous like smoke. A scream clawed at my throat. I yanked away, tumbling backward into the room with a crash, panic surging once more. My pulse pounded violently in my ears as I struggled to steady my breath, searching frantically for a weapon or an escape. I yanked open drawers and ripped through old clothing, but nothing tangible materialized, only the remnants of a life that stilled long ago. Suddenly, the whispers intensified, swirling around me in a frantic pitch, rising and falling like the tide. I staggered back to the staircase, realizing too late that the surroundings had begun to rearrange themselves. Shadows and echoes of grotesque forms started to flit past the walls, their movements disguised within the darkness. Then, a sharp knock resonated from the front door, a discordant sound that shattered the spectral whispers. I froze, weight heavy in my chest. The laugh echoed from the figure, dragging in rich, ghoulish notes that resonated through the cabin. "You can't hide forever, let's play." The door creaked open slowly, an act of treachery. Their persistence was palpable. Heart racing, I decided to confront whatever horror awaited me. As I turned, the movement within the shadows drew closer, merging into a mass of writhing figures obscured by a veil of blackness. Just as I stepped forward, a hand shot out from the darkness, fingers like skeletal twigs grasping for me, and everything fell silent. The world crumbled into night, shadows splintering at the seams, and I realized with dawning horror that the game was only just beginning. My body was paralyzed at that moment, the grotesque hand mere inches from my face, the coldness more penetrating than the night air itself. I felt a tremor ripple through me, not from fear, but from an overwhelming certainty that I had been drawn into a nightmare from which there was no escape. I blinked, trying to reconcile reality with the horror looming inches away, but all I managed to see were dozens of glimmering orbs emerging from the shadows, reflecting my terror back at me. The fingers curled and retracted, revealing long, sharp nails, each one glistening like the edge of a serrated blade. I instinctively stumbled backward, my foot colliding with an overturned chair that clattered to the ground, fracturing the silence in the room. That was when they began to move, the shadows coalescing into more defined shapes. Figures emerged, grotesque imitations of life. Some appeared to be covered in dirt and decay, with hollow eyes and mouths stretched in unnatural grins. Others were smaller, resembling distorted animals, their fur matted and flecked with rot, their claws tracing lazy patterns upon the cabin's floorboards. In their midst, the figure from the forest leaned forward, its face twisted in glee, the grin forcing its hollow cheeks to stretch impossibly wide. "Let's find out if you're as slippery as you think," it hissed. From behind the closing shadows, an unholy chorus of voices rose, echoing the words in a cacophony of madness. They chanted in a disjointed rhythm, a litany of despair that wrapped around me, cold tendrils tightening until breathing became a laborious effort. In that moment, I could smell the coppery tang of blood mixed with the damp earth, a reminder of lives extinguished long ago. I could feel their anguish, a desperate cry for freedom echoing through this cursed place. My instinct screamed at me to run, to break free from the feasting swarm that surrounded me, but it was as though the shadows had grown too numerous, coiling about my ankles like a living web. I darted towards the nearest wall, desperate to escape their grasp, but the figures converged, their presence chilling the air with a sense of foreboding. "Don't go anywhere," the figure mocked from the shadows, its laugh a bubbling brook of sinister delight. "The fun is just beginning." I swung my arms defensively, trying to bat away the thronging shadows, but they only quivered closer. In those fleeting moments of chaos, I spied the door I had stumbled through, the one that now felt like a portal to freedom, and lunged toward it. With each step, my heart hammered against my ribcage, every ounce of my will focused on escaping this den of nightmares. As I threw myself against the door, jagged wood splintered under my weight, the framework beginning to yield. I could feel them closing in, trying to anchor me back in their hell. I didn't look back, I couldn't afford to. With one final push, I burst through the threshold, landing on the forest floor with a bone-jarring thud. I staggered to my feet, fueled by adrenaline and sheer terror, but the tension in the air thickened like a tightening noose. The moonlight carved through the branches, illuminating the path ahead while dark shapes loomed at the edges, writhing in agitation. But before I could take more than a step, I was struck by an intense feeling of being watched, as though the entire forest had turned its gaze in my direction. Something was out there, something bigger, more sinister. A figure slipped between the trees, more massive than anything I had encountered, its form blurring as I strained to focus. That was when the ground trembled beneath me. I spun around, my breath hitching as the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes bore down. The sound of heavy footsteps broke the night, each resounding echo sending splinters of ice through my veins. Panic clawed at my throat as the shadows of the forest seemed to pulsate, filling the void left by the retreating darkness of the cabin. Without warning, a thunderous roar erupted, splitting the night into chaos. The ground heaved, a wave of darkness threatening to pull me back into the depths. I turned to run, but the stench of decay and rot surrounded me, a miasma that choked my throat and threatened to pull me into the earth. Just as I felt like I was going to be enveloped, I glimpsed a massive shape darting forward, changing direction impossibly, like a predator in the night that I only thought was escape no matter the cost. But as I dashed into the woods, branches clawing at my skin, the whispers returned, stronger this time, merging with the roar that filled the air. You cannot run, you cannot hide, we are the hunters now. And then, above the cacophony, I heard Ida's voice, deep and resonant, echoing through the trees as it beckoned me with chilling warmth, come play with us forever. I stumbled, losing my footing as the shadows converged upon me once more, and I was plunged into darkness. The darkness swallowed me whole, a suffocating embrace that ignited every primal instinct within me to flee. Blindly I scrambled through the thick underbrush, branches slicing against my skin, a bitter reminder of the world still clinging to its existence. The air buzzed with energy, crackling and alive, as if each pulse sent forth invisible tendrils probing into my being. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, an intoxicating blend of rage and sorrow that gnawed at my sanity. Find us, they urged. Find us before the hunt begins. The urgency in their tone sent icy tendrils gripping my heart. I had no idea who they were or what they sought, but the desperation was palpable. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, revealing grotesque faces woven from despair and anger, eyes burning with the remnants of lives once lived lost in this accursed forest. A sickening chill ran down my spine as I realized these were more than just haunting specters. They were echoes of those who had come before, trapped in this web of madness, forever hunting for an escape that would never come. Join us, they wailed, their voices rising like a tempest. Become one with the darkness. I fought against their call, my legs propelling me forward as if driven by an unseen force. I broke through a cluster of trees and stumbled into a clearing, my breath ragged like the wind snatched from my lungs. Moonlight bathed the area, illuminating what appeared to be a sacrificial altar at its center. The stone slab glistened with remnants of ancient rituals, deep grooves and runes etched into its surface, pulsing faintly as if alive. In that moment, the whispers converged into a singular voice, a low, guttural sound that throbbed against my very bones. You have found the heart of the forest. To leave, you must listen. Panic surged within me, yet curiosity kindled as well. What did it mean to listen? Shivers coursed through my body as I gazed around, searching for the source of this fevered voice, dread wrapping its fingers around my throat tighter. As I stepped closer to the altar, its surface shimmered, revealing images swirling above it. I gasped as visions ignited before my eyes, flashes of people running, screams erupting through the stillness of the night, a flash of a hunter's knife glinting under the pale moonlight. I was trapped, reliving the horrors of those who found themselves ensnared as I was, and then, like a violent tempest, they came rushing at me. Shades of their former selves, no longer bound by the altar, reached out with bony fingers through the veil of time. Their pleas echoed in my mind, weaving through my sanity like a sickening lullaby. I recoiled as I saw a shadow emerge from the woods, a hulking figure dwarfed by the towering trees behind it, stalking closer. Where are you running? It rumbled, its voice shaking the very ground beneath me. You belong to us now. I turned to flee, heart pounding, the altar a mere illusion of safety. But the whispers twisted into a dreadful symphony behind me, their hunger insatiable, dragging the weight of the forest along with them. Suddenly, a dying scream pierced the air, a sound that vibrated in my very core, dredging up a long-buried terror. "Help us!" A familiar voice echoed, striking a chord deep within. I froze, recognizing it. Mary, my childhood friend, long thought lost to the woods in a similar hunt. The cries of the spirits morphed into shrill laughter, mocking my response as I darted toward the origin of her voice, desperate for a glimpse of her, desperate for salvation, but the woods twisted, the terrain shifting beneath my feet. Unseen roots snagged my legs, ragged breaths filled the air around me, a cacophony of hope and dread. At that moment, I grasped the truth: there was no escape. Not for me, nor for Mary, nor for any soul trapped within the grasp of the forest. That I could already feel the presence looming closer, felt the chilling breath against my neck, and as I turned, eyes wide in horror, I was met not with Mary, but with the grotesque figure that had haunted me since my first steps into this cursed place. It grinned with a laughter that resonated through the night, lips peeling back to reveal rows of jagged teeth. "Come play, little one." It hissed, extending its hand, welcoming me into a world that thrived on lost souls and endless night. My heart raced. I could either accept the darkness or fight against it. With no time left to ponder, the ground shook once more, and I understood that whatever fate awaited me was drawing near. Before I could make a choice, the earth split open beneath me, a yawning chasm of despair that dragged me down into its grasp, the figures above me fading as the abyss threatened to consume everything. And then, silence. A clawing darkness engulfed me, and just as I felt myself slipping into oblivion, I heard the haunting whisper once more, "Your story is just beginning." The stillness pressed against me like a vice, rustling leaves and shadow remnants teasing my senses as I descended into the abyss. Time flickered, a reluctant candle flame threatened to extinguish, plunging me deeper into the void. My surroundings dissolved into blackness, engulfing me in a thick shroud that felt alive with pulsing energy. As I landed, the ground beneath me was not solid but instead a mass of writhing darkness, alive and eager. Panic surged again in my chest, but I swayed, unable to scream. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of damp earth and the faint tang of iron. It felt familiar, woven like a tapestry of memories I desperately wished to forget. The whispering resumed, echoing sinister promises in a multitude of voices. They flitted in and out of my consciousness, taunting. "Join us. Stay forever. You will never leave." I squinted into the baleful shadows, realizing that they formed into smoky silhouettes, swirling around me like miniature storms, each figure hinting at the anguish from which they were born. Slowly, emboldened by the numbing fear, I approached a flickering glow ahead. In this nightmarish landscape, it beckoned like a dying star amid a pitch-black sky. Could hope reside in its illumination? As I drew closer, the light shifted colors: blue, green, crimson, each hue bleeding into the next like the essence of life itself swirling with death. But as I reached for it, the figures became agitated, their movements erratic like predators cornered by danger. A deeper groan escaped the mass, and I froze, a collective shiver echoing through the darkness. "Do not interfere," hissed a voice that bore the weight of 1,000 tortured souls. Its authority caused even the shadows to tremble. The ground throbbed beneath me as disgust washed over my limbs, and I took a step back, the fear wrapping tighter around my throat. "Those who challenge the light shall find only pain." With a sudden burst, the brightness vanished, plunging me back into oppressive darkness. I staggered, panic igniting as I felt the presence of something or someone behind me. The air shifted, cold and putrid, reminiscent of flesh that had long decayed. "I've been waiting for you," a voice purred, slithering into my ears with a familiarity that was sickening. "You're just like the others, lured by the glimmer of hope." I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach, recognizing that sinister yet hypnotic tone. It was the creature from the hunt. It had followed me, slinking into my fear. "Where is Mary?" I croaked, desperate for a remnant of sanity, a thread to tether me to reality. "What have you done to her?" The figure stepped into a fragment of muted light, the guttering glow illuminating its ghastly visage twisted, with abominable features that seemed to shift under the touch of light, awkward angles folding and reshaping. "Mary is mine now," it grinned, the jagged teeth gleaming with a ravenous hunger. "Just like every soul I've gathered." Her essence dances in the shadows, alive in the stories yet untold. A vision jolted through me, Mary, laughing as she spun among lush trees beneath a blazing sun, her hair catching the light, the life in her eyes sparking joy. The memory twisted, darkening as the shadows smothered her laughter, replacing it with hollow echoes. The creature's laughter rang alongside, cruel and melodic, intertwining with the fading tones of Mary's delight. "No," I whispered, my heart clawing at my chest, longing for the warmth of hope against the encroaching cold. It leaned closer, its malice wrapping around me, and whispered, "I never lie. I simply take what is offered, and you are eager to join her." The air thickened with dread, electrifying my skin. "I am not like them." I screamed into the void, spinning on my heel. I kicked against the darkness, defiance surging like a tide within me. I will not be lost, but my determination wavered under the weight of 1,000 whispers, climbing higher, wrapping tighter. "The hunt begins anew," breathed the voice, its words tinged with twisted delight. "After all, you cannot escape what you are destined to become." Just then, a violent ripple surged through the ground, the earth resembling a living beast, clawing upwards to claim me. With every fiber of my being, I leaped toward the fading light, the only respite in this malevolent veil, despite the gnawing dread lurking in my gut. But as I soared, the abyss groaned in protest, an insatiable darkness erupted, a tidal wave crashing from beneath me, and I realized too late that something far worse awaited in the shadows. "Welcome," the voice sang softly, wrapping around me like a noose as I fell helplessly back into an endless nightmare, an unwavering certainty settling in the real hunt was just beginning, and then, in the haunting absence of light, the guttural laughter erupted around me, echoing endlessly, a frigid promise carved in the fabric of my soul, while the darkness encroached closer. My body convulsed as I tumbled through the void, the oppressive weight of shadows pressing against me, squeezing tighter with each passing second. Just when I thought my breath had been stolen from my lungs entirely, I crashed onto a cold, damp floor, the ground shuddering beneath me. A stench smothered my senses, a nauseating blend of rot and despair mingling with the familiar metallic tang. Gasping, I pushed myself up and glanced around, my heart pounding like a primal drum. It was an underground chamber, vast and suffused with a distorting, flickering light that seemed to seep from the mottled stone walls. In the dimness, the shapes of grotesque statues loomed, their faces twisted in expressions of eternal torment, their eyes vacant and hollowed. I recognized them, the victims of countless hunts, those who had succumbed to the very darkness I sought to escape, trapped like rats, a voice whispered, slithering into my ears with a caress as sharp as daggers. I spun around, realizing the sinister creature was closer than I thought, a mere breath away, its hollowed eyes reflecting the flickering light like two soul-hungry lanterns. "You mustn't lose hope in this world of despair, dear one," it crooned, amusement intertwining with the malice that reeked from its form. "Where are they?" I pleaded, my desperation rising like bile in my throat, visions of Mary's smile flickering behind my closed eyes. "What have you done with them, Mary?" it sighed, mockingly languid. "She dances with the shadows now, an ephemeral wisp, tethered to the stories begging to be told. You should feel honored, she is part of the tapestry the stories never wanted, never finished. But you," it rasped, inching closer still, "you have the potential to weave an entirely new fabric." The walls pulsated, as if breathing, the statues around me seemed to mumble forgotten secrets, their spectral mouths curling into mirthless grins. I recoiled, suddenly aware that cold trickles slid down my arms, the murky remnants of some liquid pooling beneath my feet. When I glanced down, horror gripped my stomach, a glistening red ichor oozed around my shoes, thick and gluttonous, almost tangible. "What is this?" I gasped, staggering backward into a pillar that felt alive under my fingertips. Its surface was warm, throbbing with an unholy pulse, sending violent shivers through my body. "Ah, welcome to the heart of the hunt," the creature chuckled, its grin widening, revealing rows of jagged teeth. "Each drop, a story, each shadow, a whisper of the past. You were chosen, after all." They needed a new tale to ensure the hunt continues. My eyes darted around the chamber, searching for an escape, but the shadows twisted and contorted, forming twisted pathways that seemed to lead nowhere. Each pulse of that living chamber echoed the heartbeat of a monster too ancient to name. No. I shouted, a surge of defiance coursing through me. "I won't be a part of your twisted game." Panic fueled my resolve. Yet, before I could turn and flee, the ground shivered beneath me, a sudden jolt cascading through the air. An insidious laugh curled tighter around my throat. You must understand, little creature, there is no escaping fate. The stories are already in motion, you're merely the last piece of this sickening puzzle. Suddenly, the chamber quaked violently, sending me crashing to the ground. With trembling hands, I tried to steady myself, but the very stones beneath shifted, revealing a dark maw opening like a gaping wound, the air escaping it thick with malicious intent. Join me, the creature hissed, reaching out a sallow hand, fingers elongated and twitching, and we can weave a tale the likes of which has never been. One of blood, despair, and insatiable hunger. A tale with you at its core. I instinctively flinched away as my world tilted, the darkness beckoning from the abyss like a siren call. In the shadows, I could see haunting glimpses of those who had perished, faces I recognized, mouths opening in silent screams. As desperate breaths filled my lungs, I knew that this moment would define me. The creature was right, I was chosen, and my eyes remained locked onto the swirling void yearning to consume me. But just then, a sudden scream fractured the oppressive silence, a banshee wail echoing against the walls, piercing through the fabric of my resolve. The sound had come from the darkness, rising from beneath the floorboards, a ghostly cry that carried a weight of pure terror. Mary! I screamed, adrenaline propelling me forward against the living ground, and just when hope ignited in my chest, an anguished voice emerged from the inky depths, begging for salvation within the echoes of the hunt. Help me, I can't hold on. The scream faded into an agonizing silence, and as dread clawed at the edges of my sanity, the twisted figure grinned wider, eyes gleaming with unspeakable joy. The ground opened wider, a black maw ready to swallow everything, including my last shred of courage. And as I stood there, frozen between despair and determination, I understood the real hunt had only just begun. The choice was mine, but the consequences were far worse than I could have ever imagined. And that decision would lead to terror unlike any I'd faced before. The darkness pulsated with a hunger of its own, as if the abyss that had opened beneath my feet craved sustenance. I stumbled backward, instinctively reaching for anything solid, but the ground shifted violently, tossing me into the shadows that swirled like a tempest before me. Join her, the creature hissed, its voice like ice slicing through my resolve. Join the dance. The thought of Mary being trapped beneath layers of earth, a life extinguished, her laughter now a ghostly echo, propelled me toward the yawning void, frantically searching for a way to save her. The pull was irresistible, a magnetic force wrapping around my chest, constricting tighter with every heartbeat. Help me. Her voice lingered in the air, filled with so much terror it felt tangible, as if it had taken shape in the shadows. A silhouette danced at the edge of my vision. It could almost reach out and touch her if only I could conquer my fear, my disgust for the murky, oozing ichor at my feet. You cannot save her, my tormentor taunted, a sinful thrill coursing through its words as it glided closer. She is one with the shadows now, her soul entwined with the fabric of despair. Your efforts are futile. I gritted my teeth, resisting the urge to plunge into the darkness that promised treachery in every flicker of sound. No. I refused to abandon her. My voice rang out, filled with determination that contradicted the shakiness in my limbs. But as my eyes scanned the chamber, I realized the depths of my situation. The towering, grotesque statues loomed closer, their expressions morphing into twisted caricatures of sorrow and glee. Suddenly, whispers clawed at my ears, a cacophony of voices melding into an unholy symphony. Each word dripped with malice, recounting tales of betrayal, agony, and the suffering that birthed the monstrosities that now surrounded me. You must listen, they swirled, coalescing into an inescapable sound that vibrated through my bones. Every soul before you has fallen. Why should you be any different? Fingers still trembling, I inched toward the void, heart throbbing as I inspected the abyss. There, within that consuming blackness, I caught a flash of movement, the glint of a familiar necklace, a token I had given Mary when we first met. It hung there, swaying gently with the undulating shadows, an anchor pulling me closer to my doom. Do you love her, dear one? The creature crooned, its breath swirling like a storm. Would you brave anything to bring her back? Or is it mere sentiment that guides you? I'd do anything. I yelled defiantly, voice cracking in the oppressive air, taking a step forward toward the black maw, ignoring the way it grinned wider, hunger burning in its hollow eyes. In that moment, the statues shifted, their mouths opening wide enough to reveal inner darkness filled with writhing slender shapes trapped in the stone, whispering soundlessly, grasping for realities lost to the hunt. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the air thickening with an indescribable dread as my heart dropped into a pit of hopeless fear that twisted cruelly in my gut. That it is time, the creature rasped, its fingers stretching toward me, tugging along my skin with unnerving familiarity. Embrace the darkness, if only to grasp the feeble strands of hope that flutter just out of reach. Your heart is racing, but it is not enough. Release what you hold dear so you may find more. A compulsion surged through me, threads of desperation weaving tighter. I had come too far to go back. Mary. Hold on. I'm coming. My voice echoed, battling the looming shadows, yet I had the sinking feeling I would be devoured long before my pledge could materialize. With a wild, instinctual motion, I dove toward the darkness that beckoned, the abyss staring back like an all-knowing predator. And just as I reached the edge, preparing to grasp the necklace swinging into view, a seismic roar erupted from the heart of the cavern, sending vibrations that rattled my insides. Suddenly, the darkness shot forth from the void, tendrils of shadow coiling around my wrists, pulling me sharply back, toward the whispering statues who now screamed in agonized joy, welcoming me into their fold. False choices lead to eternal bitterness. They howled, but before I could comprehend their warning, everything shifted again. The ground convulsed one last time, the abyss roared again, this time erupting in a brilliant flash of light. At its center, I saw Mary, suspended within the tumult, her face twisted in torment and pleading for me to save her. But her form was dissolving into a vortex of shadows, and as her eyes met mine, hope morphed into a monstrous scream, echoing in my mind. Then, with a wrenching pull, the darkness enslaved me, dragging me deeper into the maw, swirling chaos and snaring me, blending my consciousness with the hunt, and in that moment, I realized I was not just fighting for her life. I was entangled now in the very fabric of their tale, one that was revealing dreadfully shocking truths about the nature of sacrifice. As I fell into that churning darkness, I could only grasp for one fleeting chance, unanswered questions clawing through my mind, wondering if I would emerge alive or entwined forever in the hunt, suffocated by the monstrous secrets it was about to unveil. The world around me deteriorated into frenetic chaos, each fragment of clarity slipping further into the swirling chasm. The whispers morphed into a cacophony of madness, taunting me, each voice familiar yet grotesquely alien. I could feel their laughter wrapping around my sanity like a vice, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat. Images of Mary flickered in and out like a faulty film reel. One moment, she was suspended in the depths, her pale visage filled with pleading desperation. The next, shadows devoured her entirely, leaving only darkness and the far-off echoes of her screams. I fought against the consuming energy binding me, desperately clawing for the remnants of hope I once felt so strongly. Join the hunt. The creature purred, its voice now worming into the very crevices of my thoughts. Never has a soul been escorted towards despair so willingly. Take comfort. You will soon be one of us. That I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping to drown out reality itself. I recalled every laugh Mary had shared, the warmth of her touch, promises whispered under starlit skies, each memory a fragile weapon against the gnawing despair. Yet the darkness sneered as it pooled around me, thickening like honeyed fear. They will all forget you in time, just as you have forgotten them, it hissed. What is life but a series of forgotten moments? I opened my eyes, heart pounding like a war drum, and tried to untangle myself from the slithering shadows. The realization hit me like a thunderclap. I was not the first to wander into this realm. Countless others had succumbed, trapped eternally within these dark echoes, their souls merging with the statues now mocking and my own heartache, their carved faces an unsettling panorama of pain and pleasure. As if sensing my burgeoning awareness, shadows erupted from beneath me, elongating into grotesque fingers that gripped my ankles, dragging me further down the labyrinth. Your mind is racing, but the hunt never tires, the creature growled, its breath hot against my skin. Allow the darkness to cradle you. It is not just a shroud, but a promise of eternity. With sheer force of will, I forced my body to lurch, battling the inexorable pull of those shadowy hands. I had to find Mary. I had to break free of this insidious embrace. Just then, the light flickered again. I squinted into the chaos, and there she was once more, her face brightening as she seemed to sense my struggle against the clutches that threatened to take me forever. "Help me, John," she pleaded, reaching out toward me with desperate fingers, her eyes pleading, ethereal. They shimmered for a brief instant like twin moons piercing through a storm. But as I braved the insurmountable force restraining me, the shadows that coiled around her twisted violently, morphing into horrific creatures of anguish and despair, last vestiges of lost souls. Their howls resonated with suffering and intimate familiarity, and for a cruel second, I recognized them, the faces of friends long gone, of loved ones whom I had mourned, echoes of their laughter now twisted into agony. Staggering back, raw panic surged through me. "No! Stay away from her!" I roared, but my voice was swallowed by the overwhelming chorus of despair surrounding me. Each soul twisted into grotesque forms bore the weight of their own regrets, and in their hollow eyes, I saw my own reflected, hollowing beneath the burden of choices made, choices that led me here. It struck me then. The hunt was not merely an act of darkness, it was a tapestry of shattered lives, woven from the very fabric of choices that could lead one astray. I was ensnared in this catastrophe, a witness to the very horrors I had once disbelieved. Just as the crushing tendrils began to consume my strength, I heard Mary's voice rising above the noise, calm and piercing. "John, remember the stories. Remember our stories. We are stronger together." Suddenly, clarity bloomed within me, igniting a spark of defiance, and I unleashed an involuntary scream, an unshackled manifestation of my desperation. In that cry, I felt an unnoticed power surge, a force that shocked even the twisted roots of the darkness around me. The darkness recoiled, and the anguished faces howled, a chorus of fury erupting as if my scream had shuddered the very foundations of the darkness. In that moment, I understood. I could wrestle the shadows back. I could bring Mary and those who had come before back to the light, or at least fight against what threatened to consume us. But before I could leap toward her, blades of pure night severed the air, ripping apart my resolve just as quickly as it had been ignited. "You dare challenge the hunt?" The creature bellowed, its form manifesting into a churning mass of shadow, grotesque and writhing, like a grotesque storm born of hatred. "You will understand despair in its purest form." With a lurching surge, the maw of darkness opened wide beneath me, threatening to swallow everything whole as I fell back once again into the rhythmic thumping of my racing heart, into the madness where secrets dwelled. I could feel the darkness shifting beneath me, hungry for a taste of my fear. As I plummeted, a final flicker of hope ignited within me, Mary's eyes filled with blinking light, the fleeting shadow of her smile just within reach, as the howling void consumed all rationality around me. But the touch of the darkness lingered, a whisper in my ear, a promise of beautiful, terrible secrets awaiting me deep within. And just before everything shattered into oblivion, a realization pierced through the haze. This was just the beginning. I was destined to learn the true horror of the hunt, or perish alongside it. In that instant, the churning abyss whispered back intimate truths, darker than the night itself, threading together the fabric of a twisted reality from which there may be no escape. And with one final grasp at hope, I opened my eyes to the oncoming storm, unsure if I would break free, or succumb to the inevitable horrors unleashed before me. I awoke in a freezing sweat, the taste of iron in the air, a lingering echo of the darkness that had swallowed me whole. I pushed myself up from the cold, damp ground and blinked against the piercing light filtering through a canopy of twisted branches. The forest looked the same, but I sensed an unsettling change in the air, a tangible hum of something terrible lurking just beyond the familiar trees. Heart racing, I stumbled to my feet, ready to flee, but the memories of the hunt clawed at my psyche, refusing to let go. Mary's voice echoed in my ears, sharp as glass, "Remember our stories." I grasped for clarity, for a semblance of control, but the weight of despair was suffocating. The shadows had nearly consumed me, their whispers promising a lifelong torment. Then I saw its ancient altar from my visions, now vividly present before me like a grotesque sentinel, standing amidst the familiar trees. I felt an inexplicable connection, as if the forest had conspired to bring me back, to bind me to this cursed place. Fear coursed through me as memories of the spirits I had encountered flooded my thoughts. "Mary," my voice trembled into the void, a warning and a plea. And then it hit me, horrifying truth. The forests were not separate from us, they thrived on our very existence, our fear, our pain. Each soul lost in the hunt became a part of an insatiable darkness, feeding the malevolence that lay woven into the trees. I looked around in desperation, grasping at nature's fangs, spotting the grotesque statues standing guard. The very same faces that whispered through my dreams, faces of friends lost to the darkness, now petrified in agony. Suddenly, I felt it, the sharp shift in the atmosphere. The shadows around me seemed to lean in, enveloping the clearing in a thick shroud of creeping dread. I turned, panic rising from the pit of my stomach, but rather than flee, something compelled me to approach the altar. The ground bristled with energy, pulsing beneath my feet as I drew closer. Its surface rippled, revealing images swirling above it, people running, struggling, faces distorted in agony, laughter blending into desperate screams. This was not merely an altar, it was a confessional of sorts, a magical conduit to the other side, a means of weaving the stories that fed the hunt. No, I hissed, understanding now that escaping was not an option. I was forever tethered by the dark secrets I had inadvertently uncovered. The whispers surged around me, a tide of voices murmuring promises of power and despair. Transform your fate, John, they sang. Give in and join the hunt, but I wouldn't submit. I had witnessed Mary trapped within those shadows. Hers was not a tale of despair, but one of hope buried under layers of deceit. My previous encounters, those lost souls, were living nightmares, ready to consume me. The truth of the hunt drove me forward, an instinct to fight not just for myself, but for them too. The tension peaked, and I channeled the fragmented memories of Mary, our shared laughter, the sunlight dancing in her hair, warmth eclipsed by darkness. I will find you. I called into the void, shaking, stumbling forward, a heartbeat driving me on. Stepping up to the altar, I placed my hands upon the rough stone surface. My touch ignited a surge of energy, a jolt reverberating through my body like wildfire. In that moment of contact, visions consumed me. The shrouded memories of Mary merged with the darkness that encompassed the forest, tears of anguish and blood flowing as one. I was one with their pain, their story, a frayed tapestry unraveling before me. And as the altar resonated with turmoil, I realized the truth: the hunt wasn't just a game. It fed on our pain, our stories fueling a cycle of despair. Join the hunt. Echoed the creature's voice within the confines of my mind, but I would not succumb. Drawing upon the courage that festered deep within me, I commanded the darkness to listen. We are stronger together. I cried again, focusing on the warmth of Mary who would not be forgotten. The wind howled, and the shadows responded. They wailed like thunder, thrashing around me, but I felt their essence shift as if the merest thread of hope had pierced the void for just a moment. In that cacophony of sorrow, I glimpsed all the lost souls who had walked these woods before me. The depths of their despair mingled with fear and determination. They were not mere echoes, they were embers of resistance that I had become a conduit, and I would usher change. I forced my will upon the altar. I would carve out our stories not just of anguish, but of triumph over the darkness, a collective symphony of truth. In that fleeting incomprehension, I began to weave the souls of the lost into a tapestry of light. The cries morphed into resistance, howls of defiance against the approaching darkness. As the altar pulsated furiously beneath my hands, I saw their faces emerge, the wretched yet glorious remnant of what they once were, me friends and family among them. Thank you. Thank you. They cried. But just then, a shadow, a clawing presence lashed out, stronger than before, as if angered by our uprising. You think you can outdo what we've wrought? It screamed, rage cascading like a tidal wave over the altar, threatening to rip apart the weaving threads connecting us and plunging us back into despair. I felt an instinctive plea from Mary, guiding my hand to shape the fabric of the story further, the branches shuddering as whispers began to chant a new song: never give in. Each stroke against the stone awakened the forgotten stories sleeping in the roots of the forest, flickering lights igniting among the trees. As the cacophony reached a fever pitch, I felt my soul tethered to the shadows but invigorated by purpose. The hunt exposed for what it truly was: a predator, a thief of joy, a consumer of stories without an end. The shadows screamed, clawing desperately to reclaim their hold on me, but I resisted. With a final burst of energy, I thrust my will, the hope of every lost soul intertwined with my own, into that altar, transforming the darkness into a raging light that expelled the shadows that had shimmered ominously around me. In that blinding moment, with the forest trembling, I felt the weight of despair slowly shift as the shadows howled in furious agony. And then, as abruptly as it began, the world stilled. I stood alone in the clearing, the altar crackling with light, illuminating the forest that had always concealed the truth behind its tortured existence, but I looked around, knowing deep down that not all was finished. A bone-chilling realization crept over me, echoing through the stagnant air: darkness, once awakened, was not easily extinguished. Though I may have carved a new story forged with hope, the hunt would soon return, hungry, patient, waiting for its next player. With that thought gnawing at my insides, I stumbled back, air gripping me anew. I knew in that instant the hunt would come again. And perhaps, just perhaps, the shadows would beckon me once more. And as I stepped cautiously away, a whisper tickled the back of my neck: you can run, but you can never truly hide.